I'm Phil Gale. Welcome to the programme. History is being made as I speak, as Syria's President Ahmed al-Sharaa visits the White House for talks with US President Donald Trump. It's a remarkable turnaround for President al-Sharaa, whose rebel forces ousted the Assad regime last year. The unprecedented meeting comes just days after Washington removed him from its terrorism blacklist.
The White House prepares to welcome a Syrian head of state for the first time ever, as US President Donald Trump continues to build on his unlikely alliance with this man, Syrian President Ahmed al-Sharaa. It's been a little under a year since the leader of the designated terror group HTS toppled Bashar al-Assad and his family's half-a-century stranglehold on Syrian rule. Though al-Sharaa's victory was swift, he is dealing with a fragile security situation, with forces loyal to Assad still active and a weak but ever-present group of Islamic State fighters. Trump and al-Sharaa met for the first time in Saudi Arabia earlier this year, when the US president was on his tour of the Middle East. And despite his mercurial commentary on world leaders, Trump continues to speak highly of the Syrian president.
Well, we're going to meet, and I think he's doing a very good job. It's a tough neighborhood, and he's a tough guy. But I got along with him very well, and a lot of progress has been made with Syria. That's a tough one, but a lot of progress has been made.
Last week, the UN Security Council voted to drop its sanctions on al-Sharaa in a move put forward by the United States ahead of his visit. Trump also removed most US sanctions on Syria by executive order back in June, though some were issued by a congressional statute and need the approval of Congress to be rescinded. The pair are anticipated to discuss the removal of these final hurdles, as well as a reported proposal for a United States airbase in Syria, as al-Sharaa moves to bring his country back from political isolation.
Let's get more from our correspondent, Misha Komadovsky in Washington. Welcome, Misha. So that historic meeting has now begun. What does President al-Sharaa hope to get out of this meeting?
You're right, Phil. The meeting is now underway, and according to the White House press pool, President Trump and Syrian President al-Sharaa sat down just after 11:37 a.m. local time without the usual motorcade arrival in front of cameras, and there is no public spray or traditional handshake for photographers planned, suggesting both sides may be keeping the optics tightly controlled at this stage. It's still closed press, but that can change in a second, because essentially it's up to President Trump to make this decision, and he likes those impromptu press conferences in the Oval. President al-Sharaa is expected to announce that Syria will join the US-led fight against ISIS. We are told by our sources it's seen as a big step toward rebuilding relations with the West. Days before this trip, the US removed him and his interior minister from its terrorist list, and according to Reuters, citing 6 US and Syrian officials, the White House is weighing a major shift in Syria policy and is preparing to place a small non-combat military presence at an airbase near Damascus, part of a broader security deal Washington is trying to broker between Syria and Israel. And for President al-Sharaa, it would signal a dramatic break from Iran's influence. And for the US, it offers a way to essentially verify that Syria follows through on its commitments. And Phil, this visit marks the end of an extraordinary journey for al-Sharaa, from jihadist commander, as you said, to head of state now welcomed in Washington. Quite a long way, I have to say.
OK, so Syria gets to sort of rejoin the rest of the world. Washington gets another set of bases in the Middle East. I'm just trying to work out what's in it for each side.
Well, the White House is effectively signaling here, we can help end your economic isolation and bring in U.S. investments here, but only if you align with our strategic priorities. As easy as that. For al-Sharaa, this trip is about easing sanctions, is all about rebuilding Syria. For Washington, it's about essentially gaining a cooperative partner in Syria that fits U.S. regional interests.
Okay, so they're controlling the optics. We'll see if President Trump has one of his spontaneous press conferences. He can be famously mercurial with heads of state. I guess this is something that al-Sharaa's people have been worried about or been trying to contain.
Mercurial is the word here. Yes, Trump has a record of shifting from praise to pressure when he feels he's not getting what he wants. We saw that with President Zelensky of Ukraine when Trump shifted from he's a good guy to he doesn't have all the cards and back. So while this visit is about legitimacy and easing sanctions for al-Sharaa, the opening is fragile. If Trump feels Syria is dragging its feet, it could this deal, like this tone, could disappear overnight.
Okay, thanks for that. Misha Komadovsky in Washington.
Well, let's bring in Mohamad, DW's Middle East correspondent and Beirut bureau chief. Mohamad, for everyday Syrians, what could this visit actually mean? Do you expect concrete results, or is it more of a significant photo opportunity?
So there's a general consensus among Syrians that Syria urgently needs to restore its economy and rebuild the war-torn country that has been devastated by nearly 14 years of civil war. And they're hoping that this visit by interim President Ahmed al-Shar would speed up the process of lifting sanctions and pave the way for millions of dollars in investment money to start pumping into the Syrian economy. But they also want Syria to be again a regional player, a regional partner for the international community after decades where a country was isolated from the international community on the geopolitical level.
So that's what Syria wants and needs. Donald Trump loves a deal. What could Ahmed al-Sharaa offer Trump in return for what Syria needs most from the United States?
So basically, President al-Shar could engage in talks with Israel and agree to some sort of security arrangement that Donald Trump wants Damascus and Tel Aviv to reach. We also know that the U.S. wants Damascus to join the global coalition to fight the Islamic State. I mean, the Syrian authorities have showed signals towards agreement to this offer by the United States. Over the weekend, we've seen that the Syrian Interior Ministry had launched an operation, a widespread country operation against what it called cells of the Islamic State. And we're just reading breaking news coming in now that Syria foiled two ISIS plots to assassinate President al-Shar in the past few months. So this in addition to the fact that Syria has oil and gas reserves that the Americans would be interested in investing in, Syria basically has a geopolitical and economic weight which the U.S. could leverage to strengthen its position in the Middle East.
Right. Let's talk a little about Ahmed al-Sharaa. He was an Islamist rebel with a US bounty on his head. Now he's the first Syrian president to ever visit the White House. What is your take? Has he really transformed into the moderate statesman he promised to be and he now presents?
Well, it's definitely a very impressive turnaround, I would say. Last week, the UN Security Council lifted terror-related sanctions on Ahmed al-Shara and his interior minister. So it's an ongoing process, really. Al-Shara is walking a thin line in the country between, more conservative figure in his entourage, what used to be HTS, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, an Islamist group that he dissolved when he became president. And they want to see him always as the Abu Mohamad al-Julani. Basically, that is his military pseudonym. And between other more moderate figures in his entourage who wants to present him as a moderate president and as a leader for a modern Syria that is, trying to put end to its isolation in the international community and, position itself again as an ally to the Western powers rather than the previous Syria's alignment with Eastern powers like Russia and Iran when it was under the rule of dictator Bashar Assad.
DW's Middle East correspondent and Beirut bureau chief, Mohamad Chreyteh, thanks so much.